at the conclusion of the presentation. I'll start with some brief background on how we got here. While it's fair to say the breadcrumbs have been visible for some time, that a form of local government reform was likely to be triggered by this coalition government, there's no doubting that the remarkably short 3-month deadline handed down to us back in May to present proposals for amalgamation came as a huge jolt to councils around the country. Like a handful of our counterparts, South Waikato District Council had been engaged in discussions with some of our neighbours about sharing services prior to this direction arriving. But this timeline has left all councils with very little time to speak to our respective communities, which is the biggest shame of all, given this is the largest and most important change to happen to local government since the reform of the late 1980s. Nonetheless, we have pushed on and done the best we can within the time frame, which included an initial discussion with our district in June to help shape the guiding principles which will inform our conversations with potential amalgamation partners. This is part of that. I'd now like to welcome to our Executive Manager for Planning and Performance, Gary Knighton, and our Change Director, Mandy Bradshaw, who will talk through some of the detail about local government reform and the options we are looking at. I'd also like to welcome our CE, Susan Law, who is here to assist as well. Kia ora, Gary and Mandy.
Thank you so much, Mayor Petley, and welcome to everybody online. It's so lovely to have you join us this evening. This is the first time we've really used this technology, so it's great to see people joining. So I just want to take you through what we will be covering today. First of all, it will be in terms of how we got here, our guiding principles, the amalgamation options that South Waikato District Council is considering, what the neighbouring councils are weighing up, the timeline that we have, and then we will open up for question and answers. There's a dedicated time for questions at the end. And I'll just let you know that if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a little icon with speech bubbles with Q&A underneath. If you click on there, you can type in your questions and they will be gathered in terms of us answering them in the Q&A later. If we just move to the next slide, thank you. So the Head Start pathway. On the 5th of May this year, the government confirmed its simplifying local government changes and introduced the voluntary Head Start pathway. Essentially, there's two routes. One is to work with other councils on a proposal to merge into a larger unitary council, or the other option is to wait, do nothing, and become part of a backstop process where the government will decide later on where we would fit. Proposals are due on the 9th of August this year, ahead of bespoke legislation that would come into effect following October 2028 elections. Councils that don't participate in the Head Start, as I've said, fall into a compulsory backstop process, and key design decisions about what that backstop process will look like will be developed later in 2027. If we just go, thank you, to the next slide. So the government was very clear in terms of the assessment criteria that they will be looking at in terms of Head Start proposals. A proposal has to come from 2 or more councils, and it must represent a majority of the affected councils or population. A single council cannot go it alone. Proposals will be reviewed by the new Ministry of Cities, Environment, Regions and Transport, MCERT for short, and assessed by Cabinet on these factors: deliverability, governance simplicity, efficiency, and local representation. Proposals also have to address the regional functions that are currently carried out by Waikato Regional Council. So how will the new unitaries manage consolidating transport, interim planning and compliance arrangements, and effective river catchment management? Now, a unitary authority may be a new term for some people, and I'll hand over to Gary Knighton, who'll explain the difference between that and a local authority.
Thanks, Mandy. Put simply, a unitary authority basically rolls the two functions of territorial authorities like South Waikato District Council and the regional councils into one organisation. So regional councils currently handle regional-wide services, things like biosecurity, biodiversity, management of catchments, flood control, transport, public transport, navigation safety, and consenting of water-related matters. So they have quite a broad breadth of functions that they carry out. Territorial authorities, obviously, like South Waikato District Council, handle the more local services, parks, rubbish collection, stormwater, that type of thing. So proposals are being asked for only for unitary councils. So the unitary council that we put forward would need to deliver on both of those sets of services. So in helping us to come to particular proposals, our elected members have come up with a set of guiding principles that will essentially guide us to determine what the relative merits of various proposals, and these are the key principles outlined here. Firstly, local voice and representation. South Waikato needs to retain a strong voice with decisions that affect our community being made by our people, and our unique needs and community connections must remain central. Secondly, retaining local services. Residents have reliable, affordable local services, and any change must improve the quality, resilience, and not just reduce costs. The South Waikato community aspirations and vision remain key. Any future model must align with what our community has already told us matters most to them. Upholding Te Tiriti, Waitangi and HUI relationships. South Waikato District Council is committed to ensuring any future arrangement honours Te Tiriti through genuine partnership with iwi. And finally, continue to advocate for economic prosperity and local well-being, responding to our current challenges and improving our community well-being, but at the same time preserving local identity and taking advantage of our strategic location.
Thank you, Gary. We shared these principles with the community through a survey recently. So thank you if you were one of the people who responded to the survey. The feedback was collected, and these are the indicative results. As you can see, overall there was support for the principles from the community. In particular, retaining local services was the highest at 64% strongly agreeing and 23% agreeing. Closely, there were similar results if we go to the next slide in terms of local voice being represented and economic opportunity and local well-being. I just want to reinforce that those principles were established before any options were considered, and they really will guide our council, our elected members, in terms of assessing the options that we look at. Following that, some options were identified, and there is a survey out with the community currently. So we would encourage you to participate in that survey. It outlines the 4 options that are being considered, and people can comment and show any preference that they may have for any of those options. You can scan the QR code in order to do the survey or to go to the web page, and there'll also be an opportunity at the end of the webinar to screenshot those QR codes as well. I'll hand back to Gary to talk through the current options.
Thanks, Mandy. So Council's approved 4 options to explore further and to consult with the community on as well. So the first of those is the Eastern Waikato Unitary Authority. So that's based on the existing South Waikato District Council, the Matamata Piako District Council, the Hauraki District Council, and the Thames Coromandel District Council. Would have a makeup of approximately 119,000 people, and would be around 60% of those would be in the urban areas. Just briefly discussing some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. It would give a strong collective Eastern Waikato voice, more integrated potentially than the current councils are, and roughly follows the Waiho catchment. So it's good from that sort of catchment management point of view, remembering that these are unitary councils that would carry out those catchment management and flood management functions and drainage functions that the regional council currently does. On the negative side, possibly for South Waikato potentially not being seen as having a strong community of interest among those communities, and South Waikato communities may feel a little less connected to it. Also potentially a higher exposure to the consequences of climate change and associated costs with that as well. So that is the first option. So the second option is a Waikato-wide unitary council, essentially following the boundaries of the current Waikato Regional Council. Have a population of around 606,000 and approximately 75% of those in urban areas. So it takes in all the councils of the Waikato region. Some of the advantages there would have a much stronger voice with government, and more likely to be successful in discussions around funding for infrastructure and services that happen quite frequently. It integrates the current Waikato Regional Council functions into a unitary council. So rather than breaking up those regional councils, the regional council functions, it would utilise them in one as part of one council. Potentially that is a cost saving, and that you're not duplicating those regional council functions, and would provide for better collective planning for growth, infrastructure, and emergency services. And disadvantages, well, there's been no representation model worked up for this model option yet. Potentially some communities may feel less connected to local government than they currently are, and obviously it's a very large land area that may make local participation feel more difficult. So that's the second option. A third option was a sub-regional option. So this is based on the South Waikato, Rotorua Lakes and Taupo District Council boundaries. Would have a combined population of 146 100,000 people, and around 78% in urban areas, made up of, and there are 9 wards associated there. Advantages for this model would be a strong shared focus, particularly around the energy, forestry, and tourism sectors. Some potentially the strongest communities of interest that we would have in this area, and potentially not as subject to climate change effects as other models. On the potential disadvantages, again, maybe some who feel less connected in their communities, much more complicated catchment management, and implementation of new planning laws, as it would effectively straddle two regional councils. So Rotorua Lakes effectively sits within the current Bay of Plenty Regional Council boundary. And finally, the Waikato River catchment option. So that would have a population of around 500,000, would include the 7 councils within the district. So that would exclude Matamata-Piako, Hauraki, and Thames Coromandel. The advantages, it would allow a much more straightforward basis for managing the Waikato River system and implementing the vision and strategy Te Ture Whaimana for the Waikato River, and would also have a strong economic focus, particularly based on strong infrastructure links. And again, the disadvantage is still quite a large area, and may feel less connected to decision making. So just those are the 4 options that we have come up with and we're currently consulting on. So I would just emphasize that there are no decisions of which one we'd like to proceed with at this stage, and also just need to reiterate that we can't put a proposal in on our own. We would need to work with at least one other council to put a proposal in. So it means that we may have to negotiate with them, and the option we come up with may not look exactly like the options that we've got in front of you today. And so worth at this point considering what the other councils are consulting on. So just briefly, looking at some of our near neighbours and near neighbours. The Waipaha District Council have put up 5 different options. First of all, looking at the One Waikato Unitary Council approach. Secondly, a unitary authority based on the Future-Proof Growth Council boundaries, and that the Future-Proof Growth Councils are the Waipaha District, Hamilton City, Waikato District, and Matamata-Piako District Councils. A unitary authority thirdly, a unitary authority based on the Waikato Waters Shareholding Councils plus Taupo. So that would include the Hauraki District, the Matamata-Piako District, South Waikato District, Waipaha, Waitomo, and Otorohanga districts. And also the 2 unitary authorities based on the river catchments, which I just described, the Waikato catchment model previously. Or finally, a do-nothing approach. The Waikato District Council, further to the north, is looking again at the One Waikato approach. The 2 unitary authorities based on a Hamilton metropolitan and Waikato towns and rural model. Thirdly, a unitary authority involving Hamilton, Waikato, and Waipaha alone. And finally, a do-nothing approach. Hamilton City are looking at again a One Waikato approach. Hamilton City and Waikato District based on the EOI water partnership, similar to our Waikato Waters shareholder partnership. and finally the unitary authority involving Hamilton, Waikato and Waipaha. Matamata District Council are looking at a one Waikato unitary council approach and a unitary authority involving Matamata, Hauraki, Thames Coromandel and South Waikato, as we've previously discussed. Hauraki District, the one Waikato approach, the unitary authority involving Matamata, Hauraki, South Waikato and Thames Coromandel, and a unitary authority that would not include Hamilton City or Waikato District. Finally, the Taupo District is looking at the one Waikato unitary council approach, a unitary authority for the central North Island, so that would take in the Taupo, Ruapehu, and potentially Waitomo, Otorohanga and South Waikato districts, so, and a cross-boundary unitary authority that would include the Rotorua, Taupo and South Waikato districts. And finally, do nothing and prepare for the backstop, which Mandy previously described. So that's those are what other councils are considering at the moment, and we are certainly working with all our neighbours on potential options at this stage. Mandy, back to you.
Thank you, Gary. On this slide, we've got two timelines. The one on your left is the key dates for South Waikato District Council, and the one's timeline on the right is the timeline for the Head Start and reform from the government. As you were aware, from the 15th to the 24th of June, there was the community survey for feedback on the principles for Head Start, and we talked about the results earlier in the presentation. At the June council meeting on the 25th of June, the options were agreed and for consideration, and the survey is out at the moment in terms of those amalgamation options. That runs through to the 20th of July. So again, please, if you haven't already participated in that, please do. There are also have been some in-person HUIs across the district. They've talked to the Head Start options, but also to the annual plan and the district plan changes that are being considered at the moment. We have one in-person HUI left. That's tomorrow evening, Tuesday the 14th of July, from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m, and that is at the South Waikato Sports and Events Centre. So you're more than welcome to join us there as well. At the 30th of July council meeting, the council will confirm the options that we want to progress further into an actual proposal, Head Start proposal to the government, bearing in mind that the submission deadline is the 9th of August, so it is a very tight time frame. So this is the time really to have your say prior to, I guess, finalising a preferred option and making a submission. If we look at that wider timeline on the right-hand side there in terms of the government's deadlines, so effectively 2026 Head Start opened, proposals need to be submitted, Cabinet agrees the proposals on principle that then can go forward for further detail, and the Department of Internal Affairs will support the councils that have proposals approved at that point in order to do a lot of the detail that will be required. That goes through until March 2027, where those final proposals are submitted. Cabinet will then confirm those and make final policy decisions, and legislation will be introduced. In 2028, the legislation will be enacted and implementation will begin. New arrangements will take effect at the October local elections, so October 2028, with the backstop process applying to any councils that don't form part of those Head Start proposals. Cool. I will hand you back to Gary for Q&A. So just a reminder, if you haven't found it, just at the bottom of your screen, the little icon with the speech bubbles and Q&A, click on there and you can submit questions. Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. I think probably you've pretty much covered everything there. Like you said, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the panel, so enter any questions that you might have in there. Just want to reinforce again, there's no decision that's been made in respect of any options that we are proceeding on. So your feedback is really valid and really welcome. So please, if you haven't already completed the survey, please do. I think it's open till 5 p.m. next Monday evening, and encourage you to do that. But so if there are any questions, please let us have them.
Thanks, Gary. Corey from the Council Comms team here. I'm going to be reading out questions from our viewers over the next few minutes, starting with one which we will direct to Mayor Gary Petley, so we'll get the Mayor to unmute. That question is, have any other councils approached us with a positive attitude to joining us?
Yeah, every council bar Waikato and Hamilton have we've had conversations with. The earliest ones were the Eastern Bloc with Manamata Piako, Hauraki, Thames Coromandel, and then Rotorua, Taupo, and further discussions with Waitomo and Otorohanga. All have been favourable discussions that we've had with them, and quite positive in nature, by nature, on what we're collectively discussing. So yeah, and I think we've been bring a point of difference is why the approaches came from most of the councils, as opposed to us reaching out in the initial stages. But happy where we are in the discussions that we've had so far.
Thanks, Mayor Gary. The next question, which we will get Mandy Bradshaw to answer, and it's perhaps a little bit of a repeat of some of what we spoke about before, but Council has mentioned several times that the Head Start timeframe is very tight. Can Council walk us through the timeline from the government's announcement in early May through to the public engagement in mid-June? In particular, what internal work had to happen before the community could be consulted? And with hindsight, does Council think anything could have been done earlier to give residents more time to understand and respond to a decision?
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for the person that put that question forward. As part of the presentation, I went through the South Waikato timeline and also the government timeline, so hopefully that was helpful. In terms of kind of the initial piece before we went out with the survey around the principles, it was really us getting our heads around exactly what the Head Start proposal meant, and seeking clarification from the Department of Internal Affairs, and understanding the guidance that they then published based on the government's announcement. Initially as well, there was a lot of engagement with Mayor Petley and our Chief Executive, Susan Law, talking to their counterparts across the region to understand how this might shape up, and you know, where we might have opportunities to work together across the region with other councils. as you saw, the first engagement with the community was around the principle that the elected members worked on. And I think that's really important, because before any options were considered, it was about what is really important for our community and for our people, what will hold South Waikato in good stead, whoever we partner with or amalgamate with. So that initial piece was really focusing on what are the things we need to hold true and focus on in terms of whatever option we choose. And then secondly, it was really understanding what is the government looking for, what are they going to assess those proposals on, and then really, as I said, the Mayor and the Chief Exec starting to have those conversations.
Mandy, perhaps if I can just add to that.
Sure.
Just in terms of the guidance that the Department of Internal Affairs sent out, we didn't actually receive that at the time the government announced the proposal. It was some 3 weeks later, so it was well into June when we received that. So we weren't able to start really evaluating what some of those options were until then because of that. So that's potentially has eaten up some of that time since the May announcement as well.
Thanks, Gary.
Kia ora, team. Our next one, which I will direct to Gary Knighton. People appear to be finding it hard to compare the options because the boundaries are visible, but the operating model is still unclear. Before Council submits a proposal, will there be more information on how governance, services, finance, local representation, and transition arrangements could work under each option?
Yep, thanks, Corey. Look, I think as Mandy outlined, this proposal is what the ministry are calling, the Department of Internal Affairs are calling a light touch proposal. So you essentially get that in by August the 9th, and if they approve it in September, then there is a lot more work that will need to be done before April to basically develop a full business case. We are working very hard to get as much of that information together, but some things may, such as an operating model, budgeting, etc., will require more detailed financial modelling, which we would have to do in that period between September and April next year. We will get as much information into that proposal as we possibly can, but things like governance models are not easy to put together, and I think that would also allow us some time during that to talk with the community again around what, as we develop those models before that full April deadline, to get their views on that as well.
Thanks, Gary. Our next question we'll throw to Councillor Michael Thomas. One of the themes we keep hearing from the community is that people support a local voice, but want to understand what that would look like in practice. In any Head Start proposal, how might Council show that local voice would be maintained? For example, through local boards, delegated decisions, local budgets, service guarantees, or reporting back to the community. Over to you, Councillor Thomas.
Good evening. So this is a challenging one because at the moment we don't have a framework to work to report back on that. It'll be part of the consultation with the other councils when the plan is put together, how that might look. We'll be pushing for a strong local voice for our community and to protect that, but that'll be part of the process, and it may not come through as part of this phase. We might have to wait till after the government has made the decisions on where the amalgamations will be, and then we have to go back to the table to discuss and confirm how we get the best representation to our community. And through that second process, I'm sure we'll have more consultation with everybody in our community about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next one, which I'm actually going to send to Councillor Wallace instead of Councillor Thomas Lee. And I will preface this by saying that something will go to Council at the end of this month. But is there any more information regarding the advantages or disadvantages available before this current submission? Councillor Wallace.
Hello. So if you have a look at what's been shared with us today, there are advantages and disadvantages of the other councils that we're looking to go into partnership with. So there are some in place. We will be having more workshops, and we've got our meeting in Tokoroa tomorrow where we're happy to talk to people, our community, and there will be times to actually share what we know. But moving forward, we have got a deadline at the beginning of August, so there'll be limited time to actually have a lot more information that we've already got, but we can actually be looking at what other councils are doing and sharing the information we have, and we have got some, but not as much as what we'd like to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. We will now go to Councillor Thomas Lee with this question. In the first survey, the community was asked to respond to a set of guiding principles. Can you explain how those guiding principles were developed and whether there is still room for community feedback to add to or refine the principles that guide Council's final position?
Yeah, good evening, and thanks for your question. So, yeah, in regard to the guiding principles, we actually got those from DIA, and as Gary said, we got them about 3 weeks later. So we're really sort of at the back end of things, unfortunately. But in regards to, there is still, the second survey is still running, and it goes until Monday evening. So you've still got the opportunity to have a look at the proposals, also decide which way you want to go, and then let us know in the survey, or if you'd feel like you actually want to come down to the event centre tomorrow night, and you can actually, we run this survey where you can put a marble in the jar, whichever proposal you think is correct for our council. Our council staff is working reasonably hard trying to work out the financials on all the proposals, and to see where our proposal will sit with the other councils, and whether we can work together with one particular option or not. So, but like I said, come tomorrow night to the Sports and Event Centre, 5 o'clock, and we'll have all the staff there as well to help run through those proposals with you. Thank you.
And just to clarify a point there where Councillor Lee might have just misspoke a little bit. So the guiding principles were formulated at a council workshop as well as the initial advice from the DIA. So just to clarify that one there. A question now, which we'll throw to Mandy Bradshaw. Council has said the current survey is not a binding vote, but is intended to help shape the Head Start proposal. Can you explain how feedback from the survey and HUI will be assessed, and whether Council will publish a summary showing what the community said and how that influenced the final proposal?
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for the person that raised that. So there's the two surveys, the one on the principle and then one on the options that we have discussed and talked through in this webinar. The results of both of those will go to the elected members and will be part of the data points in terms of factors that they will consider in terms of getting to a preferred option. We effectively have published the summary of the results through the HUIs and through this webinar, as I talked you through those dials showing the results. The results will also be available on our website for both of the surveys. Back to you, Corey.
He's kind of made some comments, maybe.
Thank you, Mandy. Our next question we will throw to Mayor Gary Petley, and it's if council could go back to early May and redesign this engagement process again, so start over again, would anything be done differently? For example, starting earlier, asking the community to help shape the guiding principles first, providing more information on the options, or allowing more time before options were approved for consultation. So I'll hand over to Mayor Gary, get him to unmute, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for the question. 100%. I think with the value of hindsight, it's always hard when you're working off a tight time frame when everything's been put on you. And having done what we've done now, I think the whole thing's been a learning curve. And I think if we had the opportunity to do it again with more time, we'd probably we would be a bit more informed and in a better place to deliver a happy outcome. That's not to distract from the fact that we are working hard to try and come up with the best possible position and the best possible arrangement or option for our community. It's always easy when you're stepping into this position when it's one that's literally forced on you, that you have to work within the timeframes available to you. Going through the process now and even a month out or a month or 5 weeks in, we're still finding it difficult to reach a set position because the goalposts are moving every day. So I think extra time would have been a huge help. We haven't got extra time. But having said that, if we can get something near enough that ticks all the boxes over the line by 9 August, then after September to April, we have the opportunity to work on and tweak whatever decisions we've made and whatever's passed by DIA and the recommendations to government. We have the time to tweak those. But certainly the time frame hasn't been helpful and hasn't been our friend.
Thanks, Mayor Petley. We'll get you to jump back on mute and we'll direct this next question to Gary Knighton. How will council treat community-led feedback that sits outside council's own survey process? If residents provide a structured summary from community-led survey and workshop, will that be given weight in shaping the final Head Start proposal? Gary Knighton, I think you may be on mute there. I can see the head moving.
Apologies for that. Yeah, look, we haven't really considered that at this stage. If something was presented to us, we could evaluate it and look to see whether it fitted within the, I guess, the information that we could provide to council at a paper at the end of the month. But we would need to look at that and judge it on its merits.
Thanks, Gary. Last chance to get any final questions in. Thanks very much to everyone that has submitted questions so far. We'll perhaps just give 30 seconds to see if any further questions come in, and if not, we'll hand over to Mayor Petley for a closing karakia. Excellent. Well, thank you again to everyone that took part. I'll hand over now to Mayor Petley, who will close us off with a karakia. Just
before I close it off, I'd just like to thank everybody who came online and put these questions up, the panel, to our staff for being here tonight to assist us through this process. I'll just finish us with a short karakia. Ko mutu o mātou mahi mo tēnei wā. Manakitia mai mātou katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, ai o ki te aorangi. Kia ora.